Hello, everybody. Phil Snyder, GunClassUtah.com. Hey, today I've got some more laws that are part of your Utah Concealed Firearms Permit course, minimum training curriculum. So let's just dive into this and get started. Looks like May 7th, 2025, Section 53, Definitions. I know this is very dry material, but some of these definitions probably will come into play later on if you have any questions. So, active duty service member means an individual on active military duty with the U.S. military and includes full-time military active duty, military reserve active duty, and National Guard military active duty service members stationed in Utah. Active duty service member spouse means an individual recognized by the military as the spouse of an active duty service member and who resides with the active duty service member in Utah. Board means the Concealed Firearm Review Board. Bureau means the Bureau of Criminal Identification, also known as BCI, within the department. Concealed firearm means the same as the term is defined in Section 53-5A-301-310. We did definitions in another video, so we're not going to repeat those. A lot of people ask about convictions of crimes pertaining to whether they're eligible to receive a firearm permit or own or possess a handgun. Conviction means criminal conduct in which the filing of a criminal charge has resulted in either a finding of guilt based on evidence presented to a jury. So, in other words, you had a trial and you were found guilty, a plea of guilty, or a plea of nolo contendere. A plea of guilty or nolo contendere that is held in abeyance pending the successful completion of probation. So this is pending the completion. A pending diversion agreement, or a conviction that has been reduced in accordance with 76-3-402. We already discussed the definition of a dangerous weapon in the other video, so we're not going to duplicate that. You can watch that other video that's in the playlist of the 2025 refresher course. Domestic violence means the same as the terms in 77-36-1. And domestic violence, just so you know, without getting into the code, it has an intimate partner factor, such as living with a spouse or somebody that you have an intimate relationship, or somebody that's related by blood or marriage, something like that. School employee means an employee of a public school district, charter school, or private school whose duties, responsibilities, or assignments require the employee to be physically present on a school's campus at least half of the days on which school is held during a school year. School employee also means a substitute teacher. School year means the period of time designated by a local school board, charter school, governing board, or private school as the school year for high school, middle school, or elementary school students. The state of Utah would like everybody to know that they do have a Concealed Firearm Review Board. So we're not going to read everything, but what they really want you to know is that BCI has a 5-member board appointed by the Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety. And the board shall include a member representing law enforcement and at least 2 citizens, one of whom represents sporting interests. So what the board does is whenever there is action taken against your concealed firearm permit, whether that be a suspension or a revocation due to some sort of a crime that you were involved in, this board is tasked to hear appeals on those matters. And so that's basically what this is right here. Bureau duties. Basically, what this is saying is the Bureau shall issue a concealed carry permit to anybody that is 21 years of age or older. They have 60 days to do that from the date they charge your credit card. It's not 60 days from your class that you took. It is 60 days from when they actually charge that credit card, that $52 for a Utah resident permit. And as far as provisionals go, that is for everybody that's 18 to 20 years of age. They shall issue that within 90 days before the day on which the provisional permit holder reaches 21 years of age. Otherwise, the Bureau shall issue the permits within 60 days of a provisional concealed firearm permit holder. Permit issued under this section is not valid until an applicant is 21 years of age. That is for the provisional transitioning over to the standard permit. An individual who applies for the provisional firearm permit right here is not required to retake the firearms training. You just have to do it once, unless you let it expire for more than a year, and then you have to start all over again. A concealed firearm permit issued within this section is valid throughout the state for 5 years without restriction. Subsection 4A does not apply to a non-resident active duty service member who presents to the Bureau orders requiring the active duty service member to report for duty in this state or the active duty service member's spouse. So active duty service members and spouses with orders don't have to pay for a Utah concealed firearm permit. 2A, the Bureau may deny, suspend, or revoke a concealed firearm permit if the applicant or permit holder has done any of the following: has been or is convicted of a felony, has been or is convicted of a crime of violence, has been or is convicted of an offense involving the use of alcohol, has been or is convicted of an offense involving the unlawful use of narcotics or other controlled substances, has been or is convicted of an offense involving moral turpitude, has been or is convicted of an offense involving domestic violence, has been or is adjudicated by a state or federal court as mentally incompetent unless the adjudication has been withdrawn or reversed, or is not qualified to purchase and possess a firearm titled to 76-11-3, persons restricted regarding dangerous weapons of federal law. I'm not going to discuss that because I've already done a video under weapons laws, Title 76. In determining whether an applicant or permit holder is qualified to hold a concealed firearm permit, the Bureau shall consider any mitigating circumstances that you present to the board. So if you've got a circumstance that you feel like should be taken into consideration, they'll listen to that. Furthermore, the Bureau may deny, suspend, or revoke a concealed firearm permit if the Bureau has reasonable cause to believe that the applicant or concealed firearm permit holder has been or is in danger to themselves or others as demonstrated by any evidence, including past pattern of behavior involving unlawful violence or threats of unlawful violence. So let's say that there was some police reports that they found that would support that. Past participation in incidents involving unlawful violence or threats of unlawful violence, or conviction of any of the offenses under Title 76-11 weapons section. I've already did a video on that. The Bureau may not deny, suspend, or revoke a concealed firearm permit solely for a single conviction of an infraction violation under 76-11. For example, we did a video on airport carry into secured areas, and under some circumstances, you could receive a written warning. And that would be an example of that. Warnings that were classified as an infraction would not create a risk of being suspended or revoked. The Bureau may look at expunged records of arrests and convictions of both adults and juvenile records. The Bureau shall suspend a concealed firearm permit if the permit holder becomes a temporarily restricted person under this section right here. Upon removal from the temporary restricted list, the concealed firearm permit holder's permit shall be reinstated unless the concealed firearm permit has been revoked, been suspended for a reason other than the restriction, or expired, or the concealed firearm permit holder has become a restricted person. Again, under that weapons section that I've already done a video on. Section 4 here, basically it's saying if you live outside the state of Utah and you're applying for a concealed firearm permit as a non-resident Utah permit, you have to have a firearm permit from your home state first. And that's what that's saying right there. And you also have to attach a copy of your home state permit when you're applying for the Utah non-resident firearm permit. B says if a non-resident applicant knowingly or willfully provides false information to the Bureau under subsection 4A is prohibited from holding a Utah concealed firearm for a period. Prohibited from holding a Utah concealed firearm permit for a period of 10 years. So this applies to residents that live outside the state of Utah and you make a false statement on your application. You can't have a Utah permit for 10 years. Well, it looks like this also applies to all applications for issuance of a concealed firearm permit received by the Bureau and any renewal applications that are turned in by a non-resident. The Bureau issues concealed firearm permits to former peace officers who depart full-time employment in an honorable manner within 5 years of that departure. So if you've recently retired or you separated under this, you can get a firearm permit. Also, additional items needed with the concealed firearm permits. You need to provide your address of your permanent residence, one recent dated photograph, one set of fingerprints, and evidence of general familiarity with the types of firearms to be concealed. So if you're carrying a Glock 17 or other semi-automatic handgun, you're supposed to receive instruction, familiarity instruction. If it's a revolver, you should receive revolver instruction on that. Law enforcement officers who are in good standing can get a letter from their commanding officer, such as their chief or somebody like that, and they can get a firearm permit without going through all of the training like everybody else has to do. General familiarity instruction with the types of firearms to be concealed includes training. So this is the general familiarity instruction that you're supposed to receive at a minimum. The training in the safe loading, unloading, storage, and carrying of the firearms to be concealed, and to discuss current laws defining lawful use of a firearm by a private citizen, including lawful self-defense, use of force by a private citizen, including use of deadly force, transportation, and concealment of the firearm. For B here, an applicant may satisfy the general familiarity requirement that we just discussed if you've completed a course of instruction conducted by any national, state, or local firearms training organization that's been approved by the Bureau. For example, if you've taken an NRA or USCCA basic pistol course, or this is what usually happens, certification by a Utah BCI certified concealed firearms instructor. They're supposed to familiarize you with handguns, and when they fill out your application and they stamp it, they're saying that they provided that instruction. Or if you've been in the military or law enforcement, or if you participated in any shooting competition that's equivalent, that would also satisfy that requirement of going to a Utah concealed firearms instructor to get that. Instruction to students shall be in person and not through electronic means. I know a lot of people are scamming people trying to get a Utah concealed firearm permit through an online course. BCI will not accept that. He is just saying an individual renewing a permit is not required to retake the training as long as it has not expired for longer than 1 year. Again, if you let your permit expire for longer than a year, you have to start all over again with the application process and the training. If you want to be an instructor for the state of Utah to teach concealed firearms permit courses, you shall be at least 21 years of age and be able to lawfully possess a firearm under Utah law. And you must have completed a firearms instruction training course from the NRA or the USCCA or any other entity that's been approved by BCI. And basically, you have to have a basic pistol instructor certificate from one of those agencies, and that must go with your application. So if you want to be an instructor and you're over 21, you can legally possess a firearm. Like I said, you have to have taken a basic pistol course through one of those nationally recognized agencies, such as the NRA. And you also have to take a 4-hour instruction course from the state of Utah and take a written certification test that they will give you the day of your training. And you must possess a Utah concealed firearm permit. So you have to have also a Utah permit to be an instructor. Instructor certifications are good for 3 years from the date of issuance unless they're revoked. After the 3-year expiration, instructors to renew their credentials, they have to attend an instructional course and pass a test again. So you do that every 3 years. Utah typically offers these classes twice a year, and you can find those dates on the BCI website. Application fees for the Utah permit before July 1st, 2026 is a fee of $50 for the initial certification. And looks like on or after July 1st, 2026, pay a fee determined by the Bureau. So it's probably going to change. The renewal fee for the certificates before July 1st, 2026 is $25. And it looks like after July 1st, 2026, they can change it. This section is mostly for instructors, but if you're a student taking a class, it says the concealed firearm instructor shall provide each student with the required course of instruction. In other words, the BCI minimum training curriculum, and that can be, it used to be in the past, it was either like a disk or a thumb drive, but now they allow you to provide you an electronic a link to BCI's curriculum. And I like the link because that's the most updated of all that they are. Instructors at the end of your class shall provide a signed certificate to you that you've completed the course of instruction. And so they have to put their stamp on there, and then they're going to put your name on there, and then they're going to sign it, and they're going to date it. And BCI needs this before they'll issue the permit. Instructors shall destroy the stamp that they have upon revocation or expiration. The stamps just have the instructor's name and address and all this other information on here. This just says the Bureau may deny, suspend, or revoke the certification of an applicant or an instructor if it has reason to believe the applicant or the instructor has suddenly become ineligible to possess a firearm under state or federal law, or knowingly and willfully provided false information to the Bureau. An applicant for certification or for a concealed firearms instructor has the same appeal rights as described earlier. Paragraph 14 says, in providing instruction and issuing a permit under this part, the concealed firearms instructors and the Bureau are not vicariously liable for damages caused by the permit holder. So they've given protections to instructors and the Bureau of Criminal Identification. Any individual who knowingly and willfully provides false information on an application is guilty of a Class B misdemeanor if convicted. And the application may be denied or the permit may be suspended or revoked. So these are some of the things they can do. In the event of action being taken, as we described earlier, you could file a petition for the 5-member board to review within 60 days from the date the denial, suspension, or revocation was received. And you do that by mail, so make sure you keep your address on file with BCI. They don't forward mail. The Bureau's denial of a permit shall be in writing and shall include the general reasons for the action to be taken. This just says right here, if they've taken action against your permit, that you have access to the records that are the basis for the suspension or the other action that are taken against your license. The standard of proof from the board shall be by a preponderance of the evidence. So, in other words, the weight of the evidence that the board has presented. Upon a ruling by the board on the appeal of a denial, the board shall issue a final order within 30 days. They have 30 days to do that. Provisional permit to carry a concealed firearm. Okay, so the provisional firearm permit is issued to those that are between 18 and 20 years old, and the provisional expires on the applicant permit holder's 21st birthday. So a provisional permit is valid throughout the time before they turn 21. They may suspend, deny, or revoke a permit as discussed regarding the standard permit just previously. It's basically the same thing. They can suspend it or revoke it for cause to do that, and it's the same appeal procedure. Also, if you're applying for the provisional and you live out of state, you need to have a copy of your permit from your home state before they're going to let you do that. And you have to meet the same age requirements in order to carry your provisional in your home state. As stated earlier, if a non-resident applicant knowingly and willfully provides false information to the Bureau, so for example, you put an address down there to get a permit, you cannot have a permit of any kind from the state of Utah for 10 years. The Bureau shall also require the applicant to provide their permanent residence, not a temporary residence, one recent dated photograph, one set of fingerprints, and familiarity instruction. The applicant or permit holder of the provisional concealed firearm permit under this section must meet the eligibility requirements of another state, including age requirements to carry a concealed firearm in that state. So in other words, if you live in a state and they don't have a provisional firearm permit and they only issue permits to somebody that's 21, and you have a Utah provisional firearm permit, non-resident permit, you wouldn't be able to, that permit would not be honored in your home state because they require the age to be 21. State of Utah does issue temporary concealed firearm permits, okay? So if you need a temporary, you have to submit documentation to the Bureau justifying your extenuating circumstances why you need to be issued a temporary permit. They will do a preliminary criminal history check before that is issued. Temporary permits are valid for a maximum of 90 days. The Bureau may suspend, deny, or revoke a temporary permit prior to the expiration if they determine that they have circumstances that justify it being suspended or revoked. So in other words, they have to have some sort of a cause to do that. You do need one set of fingerprints to apply for a Utah concealed firearm permit, whether that's a provisional or a standard. One set of fingerprints on the FBI card are required. We do those fingerprints for y'all, the ink fingerprints, for a $15 fee. If you come to our class, we do it right there before you leave. But yeah, they do an FBI check on those fingerprints. Concealed firearm permit fees and applicants will pay, if this is before July 1st, 2026, a fee of $25 at the time of filing the application. After July 1st, 2026, a fee set by the Bureau. A non-resident applicant It's $35 before July 1st, 2026, and after that is the fee set by the Bureau. The Bureau shall waive the initial fee for applicants who are a law enforcement officer, an active duty service member, the spouse of an active duty service member, or a school employee. So if you're any of those, you don't have to pay that fee. A holder of a concealed firearm permit shall pay before July 1st, 2026, $20 for the renewal fee. And after July 1st, 2026, it's a fee set by the Bureau. A non-resident holder of a concealed firearm permit shall pay before July 1st, 2026, an additional $30 fee, and after that, July 1st, 2026, a fee set by the Bureau. Other fees. If you need a replacement firearm permit, so let's say you lost it, it's a $10 replacement fee, and after July 1st, 2026, it goes up to whatever they decide it's going to be. Late fees, $7.50. A late fee is basically anything that's expired for longer than 30 days. Okay, provisional fees, $25. Let's see. An applicant for a provisional firearm permit, $25. A non-resident shall pay an additional $10 fee. Replacement fees for the permit for the provisionals is $10. When you renew your concealed firearm permit, BCI will require you to watch a suicide prevention video, and you can find that on the BCI's website. It's internet accessible, and it's no longer than 10 minutes. I think the current one is about 8 minutes. And the content of the suicide prevention video is the safe handling, storage, and use of firearms in a home environment. It also covers at-risk individuals and individuals who are legally prohibited from possessing firearms and suicide prevention awareness. Before they will renew it, you shall confirm to them that you've actually watched that. Okay, this concludes Section 53 of the Utah Concealed Firearms Permit course. Thanks for watching.